The stars had never seen anything like it. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Victory, watching as his fleet assembled in the void beyond the small yellow star. 9,700 ships stretched across space in perfect formation. Each vessel gleamed with the dark metal of the Zephyrian hegemony, their weapons charged and ready. This was the largest invasion force in 3,000 years of hegemony expansion. The Admiral's mandibles clicked with satisfaction as he reviewed the tactical display. 847 star systems had fallen before this fleet. 847 civilizations had surrendered when they saw the power of the hegemony. The third planet of this unremarkable system would be number 848. The intelligence reports made for amusing reading. The natives called their world Earth and themselves humans. They were a young species, barely 10,000 years out of primitive hunter-gatherer societies. Their technology was laughably backward. Chemical rockets, metal projectile weapons, no energy shields, no faster-than-light travel. They had not even unified their own planet under a single government. Most entertaining of all, the humans spent most of their time fighting each other. The surveillance data showed constant warfare across their planet. These creatures could not even cooperate with their own species. How could they possibly stand against the might of the hegemony? "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "the fleet is in position. All ships report ready for invasion." Kethvar nodded his large, scaled head. "Send the standard communication to the planet's surface. Give them one rotation to surrender." The message was simple and had worked on every world they had encountered. Submit to the hegemony and become a vassal state or face complete destruction. No species had ever chosen destruction. The cost was always too high when facing 9,000 ships. But as the hours passed, something strange happened. The human response was not what they expected. Instead of panicked broadcasts from terrified leaders, Earth's communication networks began transmitting something else entirely. Every nation on the planet, including those that had been at war with each other just days before, sent the same message. The response came from an unexpected source, not from any government or military leader, but from an elderly human who identified himself as a janitor at something called the United Nations. His words, broadcast across all frequencies, would later become famous throughout the galaxy. "You picked the wrong species on the wrong planet on the wrong day. We have been practicing war on each other for 10,000 years. Thanks for giving us someone we can all agree to fight." Admiral Kethvar listened to the translation with growing confusion. The human's voice was calm, almost cheerful. There was no fear, no desperation. Instead, there was something that made the Admiral's scales itch with unease. The human sounded almost grateful. "Sir," the communications officer said, "we are detecting massive activity across the planet. Military installations are mobilizing, but this is strange. Every nation appears to be coordinating their movements. Former enemies are sharing resources and battle plans." The Admiral studied the tactical display. The humans were responding to the invasion, but not the way any civilization had before. Usually, planetary governments collapsed into chaos when faced with the hegemony fleet. Leaders fled. Military units disbanded. Populations rioted in panic. Instead, Earth was doing the opposite. The planet was unifying with a speed that defied explanation. Ancient enemies were forming alliances. Resources were being pooled. The entire species appeared to be organizing itself for war with an efficiency that impressed even hegemony standards. "Perhaps they do not understand the futility of resistance," suggested the tactical officer. "Their technology is primitive. They cannot possibly comprehend the power we possess." Admiral Kethvar was beginning to suspect otherwise. The human response suggested a species that understood exactly what they faced and had decided to fight anyway. This was unusual. Most species chose survival over pride. These humans seemed to be choosing something else entirely. "Begin the invasion," the Admiral ordered. "Deploy the first wave. 1,000 ships should be more than sufficient to break their resistance." As the first wave of hegemony ships descended toward Earth's atmosphere, Admiral Kethvar felt confident that this would proceed like every other conquest. The humans would see the futility of resistance and surrender within hours. Their primitive weapons could not possibly threaten ships protected by energy shields and armed with plasma cannons. He was wrong. Spectacularly, terrifyingly wrong. The first indication that something was different came when the lead ships entered Earth's atmosphere. Instead of the expected ground-based missile attacks or fighter aircraft, the humans did something unprecedented. They turned everything into a weapon. Commercial airliners filled with volunteers and explosives rammed into the larger ships. Construction equipment was modified into mobile artillery platforms. Farmers used crop-dusting aircraft to deploy chemical weapons of their own design. Even civilian automobiles became weapons as humans loaded them with explosives and drove them into landing craft. But it was not just the improvised weapons that troubled the Admiral. It was the humans themselves. They fought with a ferocity that defied rational explanation. They seemed to take losses that would break any other species and only become more determined. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, his voice strained, "we have lost 17 ships in the first wave. The humans they are not fighting like any species we have encountered before." Admiral Kethver stared at the tactical display in disbelief. 17 ships, in a single engagement, against a species that should not have been able to damage even one of his vessels. The humans were using tactics that no civilized species would consider. They were sacrificing themselves in ways that served no strategic purpose except to inflict damage on his fleet. "Deploy the second wave," he ordered grimly. "This resistance will be crushed." But as more ships descended toward Earth, Admiral Kethvar began to realize that he might have made the greatest mistake in hegemony history. The humans were not just resisting. They were learning, adapting. And worst of all, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. The war for Earth had begun, and already nothing was going according to plan. 3 days into the invasion, Admiral Kethvar was beginning to understand that the intelligence reports about humans had been catastrophically wrong. Not about their technology, which was indeed primitive by hegemony standards. Not about their political divisions, which were real and deep. The reports had been wrong about something far more fundamental: human nature itself. The Admiral stood before the main tactical display, watching red markers disappear from the screen one by one. Each marker represented a hegemony ship. Each disappearance represented another failure in what should have been the easiest conquest in their history. "Status report," he demanded. His tactical officer, Commander Thexan, hesitated before responding. "Sir, we have now lost 347 ships. The humans continue to resist using tactics that our battle computers cannot predict or counter. 347 ships. The number should have been impossible. The humans had no space fleet, no energy weapons, no shielding technology. Yet somehow they were destroying hegemony vessels at a rate that defied all military logic. Explain to me again how a species with chemical rockets is shooting down our ships," the Admiral said, his voice dangerous. Commander Thexan activated a holographic display showing recent battle footage. "Sir, they are not using conventional tactics. Yesterday, a group of human children used their entertainment devices to hack into one of our destroyer's navigation systems. They crashed it into a mountain." The Admiral watched the recording in stunned silence. The destroyer had been worth more than most planets' entire gross domestic product. It had been defeated by young humans playing with toys. "Show me more," he ordered. The next recording showed something even more disturbing. A human settlement was under attack by a full wing of hegemony fighters. Instead of fleeing or cowering in shelters, the entire population had turned their city into a trap. Buildings had been rigged with explosives. Streets had been converted into kill zones. Even the elderly and children were participating in the defense. "The humans fight as if they have nothing to lose," Commander Thexan observed. "But that is not the strangest part, sir. Analysis of their communications suggests they are enjoying this. Enjoying warfare against a superior enemy?" The Admiral's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "That is illogical. Species fight to survive, not for pleasure." "Perhaps, sir, but our linguists have been monitoring their broadcasts. They have terms for this behavior. They call it fun. They also use phrases like 'bring it on' and 'is that all you have got?' The pattern suggests they view this invasion as some form of entertainment." The Admiral turned to study the strategic overview of Earth. What he saw there was equally troubling. Instead of the chaos and panic that should have accompanied an invasion, the human planet was organizing itself with terrifying efficiency. Military units that had been fighting each other just weeks ago were now coordinating perfectly. Resources were being shared across former enemy lines. The entire species seemed to be working together with a unity that the hegemony had never achieved. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we are receiving another broadcast from the planet's surface. It appears to be from the same human who responded to our initial ultimatum." "Put it through," the Admiral ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was the same elderly human janitor who had first defied them. He sounded even more cheerful than before. "Hello again, space friends. This is Frank from Earth. I wanted to thank you for the wonderful entertainment you have provided. Our planet has not been this united in centuries. You have given us exactly what we needed. A common enemy that everyone can agree to hate. Our children are already writing songs about this war. I think you are going to be famous." The transmission continued with what appeared to be tactical updates delivered in the same friendly tone. "Oh, and just so you know, we figured out how your shields work. Took our scientists about 6 hours after we captured one of your ships yesterday. Fascinating technology, but it has some interesting weaknesses. We have been sharing the information with everyone. You might want to upgrade your defenses." Admiral Kethvar felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Captured one of our ships? How is that possible?" Commander Thexan was already pulling up the relevant reports. "Sir, yesterday a hegemony corvette made an emergency landing after suffering engine damage. The crew expected to be rescued. Instead, the humans, well, they welcomed them. The humans brought food and medical aid to our wounded crew. They treated their injuries and made them comfortable. Then, while the crew was recovering, human engineers completely dismantled the ship. They studied every component, tested every system, and reverse-engineered our technology. By the time our crew was healed, the humans had built 3 working copies of our corvette using their own materials." The Admiral stared at his subordinate. "They reverse-engineered our technology in 1 day?" "Yes, sir. But that is not the worst part. They improved it. The human versions of our corvette are faster and more heavily armed than the original. They also added weapons that our designers never considered. Things like kinetic harpoons and acid bombs. Acid bombs? They fill projectiles with corrosive chemicals and fire them at our hulls. The acid eats through our armor faster than our self-repair systems can compensate. It is creative." Admiral Kethvar was beginning to realize that this invasion was unlike any military operation in hegemony history. His enemy was not just resisting. They were learning, adapting, and improving at a rate that seemed impossible. Worse, they were doing it all while maintaining an attitude that could only be described as enthusiastic. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "we have multiple contacts rising from the planet's surface. They appear to be human spacecraft. Impossible. The humans do not have spacefaring technology beyond primitive rockets." "Sir, they do now. The craft appear to be based on our own designs but modified. They are approaching at attack speed." Admiral Kethvar watched as dozens of strange vessels appeared on his tactical display. They looked like hegemony ships, but wrong somehow. Asymmetrical, crude, dangerous. "These ships," he said slowly, "they are death traps. No rational crew would fly in such vessels." "Yes, sir. Our analysts believe the human craft have a 90% probability of catastrophic failure during normal operations. But, sir, the humans appear to be flying them anyway." As the first human spacecraft engaged his fleet, Admiral Kethvar watched them operate exactly as predicted. They were flying death traps. Half of them exploded before they even reached weapons range. But the ones that survived long enough to attack fought with a viciousness that chilled him to his core. They rammed his ships. They used their own structural failures as weapons. When their ships were dying, the human crews steered them into his vessels and detonated their remaining ammunition. "Sir," Commander Thexan said quietly, "I believe we may have made an error in our assessment of this species." Admiral Kethvar nodded grimly. The humans were not the primitive, easily conquered species his intelligence reports had suggested. They were something far more dangerous, a young species with an ancient warrior's soul, possessing all the innovation of youth combined with a lust for combat that his civilized forces could not match. The invasion of Earth was turning into something unprecedented in hegemony history, a war they might actually lose. 2 weeks into what was supposed to be a 3-day conquest, Admiral Kethvar faced a reality that no hegemony commander had ever confronted. His invasion force was being systematically destroyed by a species that should not have been capable of fighting back. The number of remaining ships had fallen to 6,000. Nearly 4,000 vessels lost to a primitive world that had possessed no space fleet just 2 weeks ago. The admiral stared at the tactical display, trying to understand how such a disaster was possible. "Sir," Commander Thexan reported, "the humans have launched another wave of attacks. This time they are using modified cargo vessels filled with nuclear explosives. They appear to be targeting our command ships specifically, nuclear explosives." The humans had taken their most primitive weapons and found ways to deliver them directly to his most valuable assets. It was crude, dangerous, and completely effective. 3 more command vessels had been lost in the last day alone. "How are they penetrating our defenses?" the admiral demanded. "Our point defense systems should be destroying these crude missiles before they reach attack range." "Sir, they are not using missiles. They are using volunteers. Human crews pilot these vessels on one-way missions. Our computers cannot predict their attack patterns because they do not follow any logical tactical doctrine. They behave like they want to die fighting us." Admiral Kethavar tried to process this information. Suicide attacks were not unknown in warfare, but they were typically used as a last resort by desperate defenders. The humans were using them as a primary tactic, and their volunteers seemed to be endless. "What is the status of ground operations?" he asked. Commander Thexan hesitated. "Sir, we no longer control any territory on the planet's surface. Every landing site has been abandoned or overrun. The humans have proven impossible to pacify." "Explain." "The human resistance operates unlike any enemy we have previously encountered. When we destroy their military units, civilian populations immediately take up arms. When we target their leaders, new leaders emerge within hours. When we capture their cities, the entire population evacuates, and the cities become elaborate traps designed to destroy our forces." The admiral pulled up reports from the surface battles. What he read there defied military logic. Humans were strapping explosives to themselves and walking into hegemony positions. Children were being used as spies and saboteurs. Elderly humans were volunteering for suicide missions. The entire species seemed to view death in battle as an acceptable, even preferable outcome. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted, "we are receiving another broadcast from the planet's surface." The familiar voice of Frank, the human janitor, filled the bridge once again. His tone remained infuriatingly cheerful. "Greetings, friends from space. This is Frank with your daily update from Earth. First, I want to thank you for the wonderful educational opportunity you have provided. Our children are learning so much about space technology. Just yesterday, a 12-year-old girl figured out how to turn your gravity generators into weapons. She is very proud of herself." The transmission continued with what sounded like a casual news report. "In other news, our scientists have finished analyzing the power cores from your ships. Fascinating design, but we have made some improvements. We are now producing our own energy weapons. They are not as pretty as yours, but they pack quite a punch. Our engineers call them ugly sticks. You will probably be seeing them soon." Admiral Kethavar felt his blood chill. The humans had reverse-engineered hegemony power cores and were now manufacturing energy weapons. This level of technological adaptation should have taken decades, not weeks. "Oh, and before I forget," Frank continued, "we wanted to let you know that we have been sharing all of our discoveries with the other species in this part of the galaxy. We thought they might be interested in learning about your weaknesses. Several of them have already asked if they can join our little war. We said yes, of course. The more the merrier." The transmission ended with what sounded like music. Human music apparently composed about the war itself. The admiral listened in horrified fascination as human voices sang about destroying alien invaders with evident joy and enthusiasm. "Sir," the sensor operator called out urgently, "multiple contacts approaching the fleet perimeter. The signatures match no known vessel types." Admiral Kethavar studied the tactical display. The approaching vessels were clearly alien but not human. They appeared to belong to several different species, some of which he recognized as former hegemony conquests. "Sir," Commander Thexan said quietly, "it appears the humans have done exactly what they threatened. They have shared our technological weaknesses with other species. We are now facing a coalition of enemies." The admiral watched as the coalition fleet moved into attack formation. These were species that the hegemony had conquered decades or centuries ago. They had been reduced to vassal states, their military capabilities supposedly neutralized. But now they were back, armed with human-modified technology and human tactical knowledge. "How many ships are we facing?" he asked. "Approximately 2,000 alien vessels, sir, plus an unknown number of human craft. They appear to be coordinating their movements with Earth's forces." Admiral Kethvar realized that the situation had moved far beyond a simple planetary conquest. The humans had somehow turned his invasion into a galactic uprising. They had taken his own weapons and tactics and improved upon them. They had united former enemies against the hegemony. In just 2 weeks they had accomplished what no other species had managed in 3,000 years. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "the enemy coalition is beginning their attack. They are using modified versions of our own weapons against us." The battle that followed was unlike anything in hegemony military history. The enemy forces fought with human-inspired tactics. They used suicide attacks, improvised weapons, and completely unpredictable strategies. Worst of all, they seemed to be enjoying themselves as much as the humans did. As Admiral Kethvar watched another 100 ships disappear from his tactical display, he began to understand what the humans had really done. They had not just defended their world. They had infected the galaxy with their own unique approach to warfare. They had turned his invasion into a celebration of violence that was spreading from species to species. "Sir," Commander Thexan said, "perhaps we should consider withdrawal. We are taking unsustainable losses." Admiral Kethvar stared at the tactical display. His invasion force had been reduced to fewer than 5,000 ships. The enemy coalition was growing stronger by the hour, as more species joined the fight against the hegemony. The humans had somehow turned the galaxy's largest military force into the hunted instead of the hunters. "Prepare for general withdrawal," he ordered reluctantly. "This operation is terminated." But as his remaining ships began to retreat, Admiral Kethvar discovered that the humans had one final surprise waiting for him. They had no intention of letting him leave. Admiral Kethvar had ordered a withdrawal. It was the first time in hegemony history that an invasion force had retreated from a primitive world. But as his remaining 3,000 ships attempted to leave the Sol system, he discovered that retreat was not going to be as simple as issuing orders. The humans, it appeared, had other plans. "Sir," the navigation officer reported with barely concealed panic, "the humans have deployed some kind of interdiction field around the system. Our faster-than-light drives are not functioning." Admiral Kethvar stared at the officer in disbelief. "That is impossible. The humans do not possess faster-than-light technology. How can they jam something they do not understand?" "Sir, our engineers believe they have reverse-engineered our FTL drives and found a way to create interference patterns. They are broadcasting some kind of subspace static that prevents jump calculations." The Admiral felt something cold settle in his stomach. The humans had trapped his entire fleet in their system. They had achieved in 3 weeks what most species never managed. They had turned a hegemony invasion force into prisoners. "How long until we can break free of the interdiction?" he asked. "Unknown, sir. Our technicians are working on the problem, but the human jamming technique is creative. They appear to be using our own communication arrays against us, turning our ships into components of their interdiction network." Commander Thexan approached with another troubling report. "Sir, we have a more immediate problem. The humans and their allies are not simply defending anymore. They are actively hunting our ships throughout the system." Admiral Kethvar reviewed the tactical situation. What he saw there defied everything he understood about warfare. The humans were deploying ships that should not have been able to function, crewed by volunteers who should not have been willing to fly them, using tactics that should not have been effective, but they were working spectacularly. "Show me their current vessels," he ordered. The holographic display showed the latest generation of human spacecraft. They were still clearly jury-rigged death traps held together with human ingenuity and desperation. But they were also increasingly sophisticated. The humans were learning at a rate that seemed impossible, incorporating captured hegemony technology into designs that their engineers should not have been able to create. "These ships," Admiral Kethvar observed, "they are still death traps. The human crews have perhaps a 1 in 10 chance of survival during normal operations." "Yes, sir. But the humans appear to consider those acceptable odds. Our intelligence suggests they have more volunteers than they have ships to put them in." Admiral Kethvar tried to understand the mentality that would lead an entire species to volunteer for what amounted to suicide missions. In hegemony culture, preservation of life was the highest priority. Soldiers were valuable resources to be protected and preserved. The humans seemed to view their own lives as ammunition to be expended against his fleet. "Sir," the communications officer announced, "we are receiving another transmission from the planet's surface." Frank's voice filled the bridge once again, still maintaining that infuriatingly cheerful tone. "Hello again, space friends. Frank here with another update from Earth. I hope you are enjoying your extended stay in our solar system. We certainly are enjoying having you here." The human janitor continued with what sounded like a tourist guide's presentation. "As you may have noticed, we have made some modifications to your faster-than-light drives. Think of it as our way of encouraging you to stay for the full experience. We have so much more to show you." Admiral Kethvar listened with growing horror as the human explained their intentions. They were not content to simply defend their world. They wanted to completely destroy his fleet, and they wanted to do it slowly, ship by ship, in a way that would serve as a lesson to the rest of the galaxy. "We understand that you may be eager to leave," Frank continued, "but we really must insist that you stay until we have finished our studies. Your technology has been so educational. Our children are particularly interested in your weapons systems."
They have been having contests to see who can come up with the most creative ways to turn your own ships against you. The transmission ended with another of the humans' war songs.
This one seemed to be about hunting alien invaders through space. The lyrics were disturbingly specific about the various ways human fighters intended to destroy hegemony vessels. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, "multiple contacts approaching from all vectors. It appears the humans are beginning another coordinated attack." Admiral Kethvar watched as hundreds of human craft appeared on his sensors. They were approaching from every direction, using the planets and moons of the system as cover. It was a complex, multi-pronged assault that demonstrated tactical sophistication far beyond what should have been possible for such a young species. "These attack patterns," he observed, "they are based on our own tactical manuals. How did they acquire this information?" "Sir, our captured crews have been cooperative. The humans have treated them well, and in return, many have shared tactical information. The humans convinced them that cooperation would lead to better treatment." Admiral Kethvar realized that the humans had played his own forces against him. By treating prisoners well instead of executing them, they had gained valuable intelligence about hegemony tactics and technology. It was a strategy that no hegemony commander would have considered, being kind to enemies in order to defeat them more effectively. The battle that followed demonstrated just how much the humans had learned. They attacked with precision and coordination that rivaled his own forces. They used his own tactics against him, modified with human innovations that made them even more effective. But it was not just the tactical improvements that troubled the admiral. It was the attitude of the human crews. They fought as if they were having the time of their lives. Radio transmissions from human fighters were filled with laughter and jokes. They treated space combat like some kind of entertainment. "Sir," Commander Thexan reported, "we have lost another 200 ships in this engagement. At this rate, the fleet will be completely destroyed within a month." Admiral Kethvar nodded grimly. The humans had achieved something that should have been impossible. They had turned the galaxy's most powerful military force into prey. They had trapped his fleet in their system and were systematically hunting down his ships for sport. "Prepare a message to Hegemony High Command," he ordered. "Inform them that Operation Sol 3 has encountered unexpected complications." As he composed the most difficult report of his career, Admiral Kethvar wondered if any of his remaining ships would survive long enough to deliver it. The humans had turned his invasion into their entertainment, and they showed no signs of growing bored anytime soon. 6 months after the invasion began, Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of one of the 17 remaining ships of the once mighty Hegemony fleet. Around him, the bridge crew worked in exhausted silence. There was no longer any pretense that this was an invasion. It had become a desperate struggle for survival. The humans had finally allowed them to repair their faster-than-light drives, not out of mercy, but because they wanted the survivors to carry a message back to the Hegemony. The message was simple and terrifying. Earth was no longer just defending itself. It was preparing to take the war to the stars. "Sir," Commander Thexan reported, "the humans are requesting a final communication before we depart." Admiral Kethvar nodded wearily. He had expected this. The humans seemed to enjoy their talks with his fleet. It was part of the psychological warfare that they had perfected over the past months. Frank's familiar voice filled the bridge one last time. But now the elderly janitor was not alone. The transmission included voices from across human civilization. Scientists, soldiers, children, and leaders from every nation on Earth. "Greetings, friends from space," Frank began in his usual cheerful tone. "This is Frank, speaking for all of humanity. We wanted to thank you for the wonderful gift you have given us. When you arrived, we were a divided species, fighting amongst ourselves and wasting our potential. You have united us in a way that nothing else could." A younger voice joined the transmission, that of a human scientist. "Your technology has advanced our civilization by centuries. Your weapons have taught us new ways to defend ourselves. Your ships have shown us the path to the stars. We could not have asked for better teachers." Then came the voice of a human military commander. "You have also taught us something very important about the galaxy. You have shown us that there are species out there who believe that might makes right, who think that advanced technology gives them the right to conquer others. This is a lesson we will not forget." Admiral Kethvar listened with growing dread as the human transmission continued. They were not just letting him go. They were sending him back as a messenger, carrying a warning that would reshape galactic politics forever. Frank's voice returned. "We are sending you home with a message for your hegemony. Tell them that Earth is no longer interested in being left alone. Tell them that we have learned about the galaxy beyond our world, and we do not like what we have seen." The transmission shifted to show images from Earth's surface. The Admiral could see massive construction projects, shipyards that had not existed months before, and weapons testing that demonstrated human technological advancement at an impossible rate. They had not just reverse-engineered hegemony technology, they had improved upon it. "We have learned about your vassal species," a human scientist explained. "We have spoken with them during this conflict, and we have heard their stories. We understand now that the hegemony rules through fear and oppression. This is unacceptable to us." Another voice joined in, this one belonging to a human child. "My teacher says that bullies only understand one language. We are very good at speaking that language now. We learned it from you." Admiral Kethvar realized that the humans were announcing their intention to become a galactic power. They were not content to simply defend their own world. They intended to challenge the hegemony directly, and they had the technology and determination to do it. Frank's voice became more serious. "Tell your leaders that humanity is coming to the stars. Tell them that we will be visiting every world that the hegemony has conquered. Tell them that we will be offering those worlds a choice: freedom or continued slavery." The transmission showed more images: human ships under construction, weapons being tested, and most disturbing of all, representatives from dozens of alien species working alongside human engineers. The coalition that had formed during the invasion was growing stronger, united by their shared hatred of hegemony oppression. "We are not a warlike species," Frank continued, "but we are a species that values freedom. We will fight for it, and we will help others fight for it too. Your hegemony has taught us that the galaxy is a dangerous place. We intend to make it dangerous for tyrants." The final part of the transmission was the most chilling. It showed human ships departing Earth's solar system, heading toward known hegemony worlds. They were already beginning their campaign of liberation, armed with superior technology and an unshakable belief in their cause. "Go home," Frank concluded. "Tell your story. Let the galaxy know what happened here. Let them know that Earth remembers every species that the hegemony has conquered, and we are coming to set them free. Let them know that humanity has decided to take responsibility for galactic civilization." The transmission ended, and Admiral Kethvar was left in silence to contemplate the magnitude of what had occurred. The hegemony had not just failed to conquer a primitive world. They had awakened something that would threaten their entire empire. "Sir," Commander Thexan said quietly. "The humans have cleared a departure corridor for us. They are escorting us to the edge of their system." Admiral Kethvar looked at the tactical display one last time. Human ships surrounded his 17 remaining vessels, not as captors but as escorts ensuring safe passage. It was another demonstration of human psychology that he could not understand. They were powerful enough to destroy his remaining ships, easily, but instead they were providing protection for their enemies. As his fleet limped toward the edge of the Sol system, Admiral Kethvar began composing his report to the Hegemony High Command. It would be the most important document in galactic history and the most difficult to write. "How do you explain to your superiors that you have awakened a sleeping giant? How do you tell them that a species they considered primitive has become the most dangerous threat the hegemony has ever faced? How do you convey that humanity possesses not just advanced technology, but something far more dangerous? The absolute conviction that freedom is worth any sacrifice." Months later, when Admiral Kethvar's report reached Hegemony High Command, it would result in the most significant change in galactic policy in 3,000 years. For the first time in their history, the Hegemony would add a star system to their charts with a new designation: Quarantine Zone, Approach Forbidden. Earth would become the first planet in galactic history to be declared off-limits, not because its inhabitants were too primitive to contact, but because they were too dangerous to engage. The Hegemony, an empire that had conquered nearly 1,000 worlds, would officially acknowledge that there was one species in the galaxy they could not defeat. But by then, it would be too late. Humanity had already taken its first steps toward the stars, carrying with them a message that would spread from world to world. Freedom was possible, tyranny could be defeated, and there was a species in the galaxy that would fight for the liberty of others. The Zephyrian hegemony had sent 9,700 ships to conquer a primitive world. Only 17 returned, carrying news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, and they were very unhappy with the way things had been run in their absence. The galaxy would never be the same.